All right. So here's another question that Bernie got, and it is a similar question. It came earlier. It is, and I think he didn't do as well with. He did well with part of this question, not so well with one of the premises, and so there were a couple of stories of what appeared to be narrow instances of sexual harassment on the campaign in 2016. This is every campaign, as far as I can tell, had the same problem. Clinton had someone very high placed in her campaign, I guess, who was accused of similar. But his response here makes it clear. My understanding is the campaign is taking this extremely seriously. But there was another part, and I think he addressed that well. There was another part of this question that I didn't think he did as well.
Shadi's from Denver.
As we saw in the 2018 midterms, the Democratic Party has become more female, more racially diverse, and younger in age. How can a voter like me feel confident in your ability to represent the party, especially given that your response to sexual harassment allegations during your campaign is that you were, quote, a little bit busy running around the country trying to make the case to be elected as president?
Well, I think that quote was a little bit out of context. But let me ask you a question. I am enormously proud of the fact that we have the most diverse, progressive freshman class in the history of the United States Congress. And you know what I did in 2016 and in 2018? I ran all over this country to try to make that happen. All right, so when you talk about the political revolution, you're talking about two things. Number one are the ideas that we are fighting for. An economy that works for all, not just the 1%. But the second point that I have made over and over again is we're not going to be able to implement a progressive agenda unless millions more people get involved in the political process. So I am delighted. We started an organization called Our Revolution. I think Nina Turner is here. You know what the purpose of Our Revolution was about? Is precisely to bring young people into the political process. And I think we're making some real progress.
But what are you going to do, Senator, to make sure that the allegations that occurred against your campaign a couple of years ago are not repeated? What are you personally going to do to make sure that doesn't happen?
Pause it for 1 second. All right, so because he does much better with this question in terms of the sexual harassment. But the problem that Bernie has in addressing that first part of the question is, regardless of whether you think the premise is important or not, the fact of the matter is the party is far more diverse and dynamic and changing. I don't know if it's changing as rapidly as much as there's a greater awareness of the party being made up of a vast majority of people, a diverse group of people. But he has to acknowledge that that's the case. He has to acknowledge that I am aware that when Democrats win, they lose the white vote. And when Democrats win, they always lose the old white man's vote. And we're going to have to rely on people who look like this woman to win. And he has to acknowledge the reality of that. And then simply say, and then go on with the rest. There cannot be any defensiveness about that because you're not fooling anybody. She asked about people of color, about women, and he responded with young people. And he's got to address the question. And he's got to do exactly what he did later in the broadcast in response to some criticism that he's gotten in the African American community. More specific criticism. But he's got to be able to do that because he, I think, has the confidence that his policies are going to help across the board. And the reality is he's an old white guy. And he's obviously, he's not going to get any younger and he's not going to get any less white. And so he's got to just acknowledge it and move on. And, but for, day 2 of the campaign or day 6 of the campaign, I think is in pretty good shape. And then this, I think, was very good because they clearly have a specific apparatus that they have developed or developing to deal with sexual harassment on the campaigns.
A couple of years ago are not repeated. What are you personally going to do to make sure that doesn't happen again?
Let me tell you what we have done and what we are doing. I was very upset to learn what I learned. When I ran for re-election in Vermont in 2018, we instituted, I think, maybe the strongest protocols against sexual harassment, and that will be the protocols we bring into the 2020 presidential election. Every employee of mine in this campaign will get significant amounts of training to understand what sexual harassment is about. Anybody who feels harassed will have an independent entity to speak to outside of the campaign, and we have hired some of the best people in the country to help us on this issue. We take this issue very, very seriously.
I think this is I don't think campaigns have had to deal with this in the past. Women have had to deal with it probably the entire time. Campaigns themselves have not had any type of formalized apparatus, as far as I can tell, to deal with any, employee issues like of this ilk. They just haven't felt like they needed to. And it's good that they now realize they do. And there should be formalized systems for people to deal with this stuff. And it's good. I frankly think every campaign, we should be able to go to their website and see what their, obviously not the specifics, or it shouldn't be too granular, but we should see, like, hey, this is a process that we have that is institutionalized within the context of our campaign. We have, some form of human resources function to deal with this, because inevitably stuff like this comes up in the context of campaigns.